Well, happy Tuesday, everybody. So excited to be here and spend some time with all of you and been really looking forward to today. As I mentioned last week, that today we are going to bring in an organization and specifically a leader in that organization that I would describe as a warrior for women. She is remarkable. What she's up to and the difference she's making for women is exceptional. And that is our special guest today, Cheri Parlaman, who is from the House of Ruth. And before we get into all the awesome things that Cheri does and the House of Ruth does, she's also a really fun, interesting woman. And we always want to know all kinds of neat things about our guests today. So I asked her to introduce herself, and I'm going to have a little extra fun with her today before we get super serious, because I heard, in addition to all the things she does, that she lives in something kind of like a petting zoo.
Yeah, so as I met Leanne and we were talking yesterday, I told her, I my fun story for folks is that, we do have an interesting home life. We have 4 hermit crabs, I have 3 children, 2 snakes, and 1 dog. And so that has been our COVID trick. Our kids have fallen in love with nature during COVID. We've been hiking and those sorts of things, and they discovered that they love snakes. And so now we have 2 of them. So never thought I'd be a snake owner, but here we are.
You are a braver woman than I am, that's for sure. I don't know if I could do a snake in my house, so, bless you. But with all the things you fight for, I guess that's just nothing, having a snake in the house, right? Well, I'm really grateful that you took the time to be on here today. And we have a lot of people who are from the Mid-Atlantic region that are familiar with the House of Ruth, but we also have people from all over the country. And we even have a few Aussie guests and European guests as well. So would you mind please taking a minute and just sharing with everybody what the House of Ruth is and specifically what you do, please?
Sure. So House of Ruth Maryland is a service provider for victims of intimate partner violence. What we're most known for locally is our emergency shelter, but that's a very small part of the work that we do. Only about 300 women come through the shelter a year, but we work with about 9,000 adult victims in the greater Maryland area for the most part. We do provide services in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's County, and Montgomery County. And so that's where the majority of our clients are. We do see some outside of that. We provide legal support, whether it's getting peace and protective orders. We do some custody work. We do some divorce cases, so helping them navigate the court system, which if you're not familiar with it, can be very intimidating. We do counseling services. We also work with the abusers. We know that we can build a shelter every day, but if we don't change the abusive behavior where it starts, then we're never going to make a change. So we do work with the abusive partners. And we also provide a tremendous amount of community education, working with other service providers, working with youth serving professionals, because when you think about it, if you're a parent, once your kids get to middle school and high school, they'll spend more time with their sports coach than they will you. And so what are these youth serving professionals doing? Do they have the tools and the tips that they need to be involved in these conversations? And then we also have a training institute where we do trainings nationally. We work with other service providers. We work with companies. If your company has a situation that you're not sure what to do with or have an incident, we have lots of companies that will reach out to us when something happens at the office, or they have someone, the most common story is, a woman walks in with a black eye and, well, how did that happen? Well, I fell down the stairs. There are all these warning signs that people see. And so we work with a lot of companies on what does your DV policy look like? How do you intervene? What do you do? How do you get her help? And how do you help others? What do they do when they see it? So we do lots of incredible things that go beyond the direct service to victims.
That's amazing. Now you've been there for 10 years, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep. A little over 10 years now.
10 years. Now, it's funny when we were chatting earlier. So when I was going through law school, my last big paper that I did before I went through and, became an attorney was on domestic violence. And it's heartbreaking. It's really an incredibly sad thing to see. It's difficult on the victim, difficult on the kids. It's really tough. So I have to give you so much recognition, love, and respect for being committed to working in such a challenging emotional environment for 10 plus years. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, why do you love it? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, what drives you, what keeps you in there and gives you hope? Would you mind sharing that with all of us today?
Sure. And it's funny that you say that because I say that about our counselors. I don't do direct service with clients because I don't have the chops for that. There are
Yeah.
incredibly special people who do that work. And what keeps me coming back is that there's so much need. The stories, over 10 years, we've seen the stories change. Before there were different needs, and especially in the last year, the women who are coming to us, their needs are different. They're much more significant. They've been sheltering at home, and partners working from home. They're working from home, and they're waiting longer and longer to get help, and so their needs are much more significant now. But what keeps you coming back are the great stories. The stories. Not everyone is a success story, and that's just the reality of any type of work when you're working with other people. But we have some great stories, and some of the stories that will never leave. We were several years ago. Every year we do an adopt a family program at the holidays, and so donors adopt a family and provide holiday presents for them. And this one woman came in to get presents for her and her family, and she had asked for a Christmas tree, and so we got all of these things for her. And as she was coming in, she just sat down and just started crying. And she had gotten the keys for her new apartment that morning. And so now she had Christmas. And I'm getting teary-eyed just telling the story because it was just such a powerful thing. She was in an apartment on her own for the first time in her life. And now she was picking up Christmas for her kids. She said, my kids are going to have a tree, they're going to have presents, and we're going to be safe. And those are the sorts of things where we know that we're making a difference. We continue to work on our programs to make sure our programs are the best they can be, to make sure that when we're working with these victims, they have the best possibility for a fresh start. And that's what keeps me coming back, because there are success stories, and we're getting better at what we do, and figuring out how do we place victims in housing and what makes them successful. What are the key things that we can do once we place them in the community to make sure that they can stay there and that they're safe and that they can move beyond this? And, there's so many great stories that have gone on through the years. We've had women that have, one woman who was a child resident. She was at our facility with her mom many years ago, and then found herself at our facility as an adult. And it's not uncommon. It's very, very common if you grow up in an abusive environment, whether you're male or female, to replicate those behaviors as an adult, because it is learned, and you learn how to be in a relationship based on what you've seen. And if that's all you have as a frame of reference, then that's what becomes your adult relationship. And she found herself there as an adult, and we were able to work with her and get her out of the situation because that was what she wanted to do. We got her out, we got her some job training. She got a new job. She's in an apartment. She's been promoted, and it's a whole new life for her. And that's really exciting, because in that story, we changed the trajectory of that family. We broke the cycle for that family, and that's huge. And that's, that spills out into the community, and it just really has a huge impact. So that's what keeps you coming back, because, people do win, and that's the most important thing.
It is amazing what you said. It does duplicate so much, but not only did you break the cycle for the woman, but with her kids not being in that,
Right.
that could be the last generation of it. So
Right.
it's remarkable. And it's funny. I know we were talking the other day. I had a charity called Success in Style here a month ago, and one of the things they do is when in situations like this or other situations where a woman's returning to the workforce and starting her life all over again, they provide the wardrobes when, they're going on the job interviews and doing all that as well. But I think that if you can get them safe, that's the most important thing you can do for them and their kids. So that's really remarkable. And I know even in this community that we've started here, in this private community on Facebook, that we have had quite a few people have experienced. As a matter of fact, we had a speaker who went through a very difficult domestic violence marriage and helped change stalking laws. And but I also know that there's a lot of silence. That's something you and I talk about. And out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women in here, that there are certainly some that are quietly and tragically going through this. And there are also some women who may suspect that their friend or their relative is in a situation. So can you please, if you don't mind, take a few minutes, and how would you address both of them? If someone's out there and they are in a situation where they're not talking to anybody, or if someone thinks it's going on, how would you tell them to move forward and make a difference?
Sure. So the national statistic is 1 in 4. 1 in 4 women will be a victim at some point in their life. And so when you start talking about a group of this size, as we talked the other day, I promise you there's somebody here who is in this situation right now, and they may be at the beginning, at the end, and this can be one of the more challenging groups to have this conversation in, because women who are leaders in the workforce, it's very hard for them to come forward and say, I'm not a team player at my house, and here's what's happening at my house, because to the world, they have everything under control and they've got it all together and they're leaders and they're doing all of these things. So the stigma of saying, but that's not what my home life is like, can be very, very challenging. Years ago, we had a local reporter who was so fearful of the situation that she was in that she reached out to me through our PR person and wouldn't tell me her name. And I spent over an hour on the phone with her because, she's like, I can't let anybody else know this is happening, but I'm doing all these live shots and he's showing up at the live shots. And my cameraman has noticed, and he was a firefighter. And so he knew the police department, and there were all of these complicating factors, but she was scared to say, how can I get help? And so, easy things for somebody that's in the situation, changing your locks, making sure that if he has keys to your house, changing your locks, little things like that. But what we also know is that doing things like that and leaving put you in the most serious danger at that point in time. Sometimes he will walk away. Sometimes you get a protective order and they'll move on. Other times they're not going to. And so we work with the victim to talk about what's most safe for you. So what the research shows and what our own experience shows is that the victim knows how serious he is about whether or not he is going to kill her, quite frankly. And that's, so we work with victims because sometimes, quite frankly, it's safer for them to stay. And that's a hard thing as an advocate to accept and as a community to accept. But we know that that's sometimes the case. And so working with what does safety look like in that situation, and where do you go if he gets upset? What do you do? And so for somebody that's in this situation right now, what I would say is you are not alone by any stretch of the imagination. And there are people that you would never think of that are dealing with some of these same sorts of things. So get help. Make sure that you have a safety plan. Talk to somebody about what a safety plan looks like. Have a code word, so that if you're in a situation where you're scared or you've been kidnapped or any of those things, you have a code word where you reach out to somebody and, whatever it is, falling leaves or something, so that if you say that to them, they know that something's wrong and they need to come help. So there are some really little things that you can do to keep yourself safe. But if you're in that situation, please reach out, because there's lots of help available and you're not alone. You simply aren't alone. So please know that there are others just like you, and there's no shame in that, because we as a community, as a world, have to stop saying, why doesn't she just leave, and start asking, why does he do this? It's all over. If you're on social media, anything, the Gayle King interview, this week, and she said, oh, well, why didn't you just leave? And then said, I shouldn't have said that. Well, no, you shouldn't have said that. Like that, we shouldn't have that conversation. It's not her fault. It's not the victim's fault that he beat her. It's his fault. And we need to question his behavior. So for that piece, if you're in that situation, please reach out to somebody. We'll share the hotline number for our organization.
Hotline number they can call, right?
Yep. We have a 24-hour hotline. We also have a 24-hour chat. So if you want to talk with somebody but want to do it fairly anonymously, you can do it that way as well. Again, by phone, you can do it that way, fairly anonymously as well. So there are ways to reach out to us and get help without, having to share more than you're comfortable sharing.
So before we go to the other piece, then we could put the site and the hotline and all that information on here. So we'll post it when this is done. So
absolutely,
if people, need help, they'll know where to go, and they don't have to be burdened for it. Okay.
Absolutely. And I'll also give you some national resources, because I know you said that there are folks outside of our local region. We're happy to help, but what we'll do is we'll connect you with somebody that's local to your area so that you can get some more direct support. But that's if you're in that situation. If it's somebody that because we all know somebody. We all know somebody that you've gone to a party with and you've been really uncomfortable by how he treats her or how he talks about her or how he grabs her arm when he leads her. There are all of these things. And I see you nodding your head, and I know I can't see other people, but I can see other people. Like, there's kind of that visceral reaction. You have those friends where you're like, oh, I just don't like that guy. Yeah, you're like, what do you see in him?
And you're like, you kind of just feel that dominance and that control and the intimidation and all of that. And it's so difficult. And, before you finish, the thing is that as a friend, if you're seeing something like that, you don't see any sign of physical abuse, a lot of people will just go, oh, well, he's just a jerk, but how do you figure out or cross the line or not cross the line? I think that would be an amazing piece of advice if you could share for people, please.
Sure. Well, and emotional abuse is sometimes far worse than the physical. It's psychological terrorism. We had a woman who did some work with us a couple of years ago who is still one of the more chilling stories. She is still alive, thankfully, but I'll never forget her calling and telling me he's going to kill me one day. And she said it just like that on the phone. And he would do things like he would leave the top of his cigarette box under her windshield when she was at work to let her know that he had been there and that he was watching, things like that. So even though you may not see the physical, the other types of abuse are just as damning, quite frankly. If it's emotional abuse, if it's financial abuse is huge, even for women like this group that, for the most part, probably folks here have financial resources or people think they do. And so those sorts of things can create lots of barriers to getting help for a woman. And so if you see that, if you have concerns, the most important thing you can do is don't villainize him because she loves him or she's starting to love him. And, where it all starts and I've heard 10 years worth of stories and they all have elements of the same thing is he was so wonderful in the beginning and he loved me so much. He wanted to spend more time with me. He was spending more time with me and that's where the isolation starts. He just wants to be with me. He doesn't want me to be with my friends or my family. It's because he loves me so much. And it's just through that control and that isolation and it gets worse and worse. So the most important thing you can do is don't villainize him. Ask her if she needs help. I noticed this made me feel uncomfortable. Are you okay? Can I help you? Do you feel safe in this relationship? And then be there because the average victim will leave 5 to 7 times before she leaves for good. Wow. And what happens is the first time everybody's like, all right, you did a great job. Everybody's supportive. By times 3 and 4, that support network has gotten very small because people are like, oh, well, she's just going to go back. Why, I'm not going to help her. It's the boy who cried wolf, she's going back. But it takes time to build that, especially when you're talking about a long-term relationship. If someone's been in this for years, there's just this beaten down, emotional feeling that it's hard to leave. And as soon as she leaves, in most circumstances, he's going to come with flowers and roses and diamonds and stuff. And everything will be wonderful for 3 months, 6 months, a year. And then those same behaviors start over again. So really it's being supportive of her, making sure that she has the resources that she needs, getting informed yourself, making sure that when she does come to you for help, where to go get more help for her. Because the reality is, most of us aren't trained to do this. And so where do I help her get help if she needs it and when she's ready for it? And, being available, it's, in today's society, people just aren't available to other folks. And so being open and having that conversation and just saying, that made me really uncomfortable. Are you okay? And sometimes you might find out they're not, and they just needed somebody to point a finger to it to say, this is what it is. But that's really the most important things you can do.
Or sometimes somebody they're too ashamed, but if you open the door and ask them, then they feel, safe. And it's interesting, you touched on something really quickly. And I remember, many years ago, I was talking with someone who'd been through this and she called it the sorry cycle, which is that, he would be all about how phenomenal she was and he can't live without her and there's nobody else and she's so amazing. Yep. And then it would start to slip down this road. And when it got out of control, she would leave and then he would legitimately really be sorry because he was duplicating what he grew up with and he felt terrible. And then she'd be back on a pedestal. And it was exactly what you said. And it was such an eye opener. I think a lot of women don't understand that that's a common cycle. It's pretty common.
Oh, yeah. We call it the honeymoon, and it's because it's what it is. It's the honeymoon phase. It's everything's great. Everything is lovely. And then it starts to deteriorate again over time. And the other thing is that it's complicated. If there are children involved, if finances are involved, if a house is involved, all of those things. And then there's cultural issues. There are certain cultures where you don't leave your partner. Once you're married, you're married. And, you would be ostracizing yourself from your family, from your community. And so there's so many things that go into this. So really just making sure that she has a touch point. She has a safe place to go to say, it's out of control, or I do need help, or, do you know where I could go to get help? And that's the most important thing we can do as bystanders, because we can't tell her to leave, because it's not that simple.
And in the case you just talked about, it's kind of like a double curse, because if it's culturally unacceptable for you to leave your spouse, then the people someone would normally go to for safety and protection and love and support would be the exact people they're afraid would ostracize them.
Right,
So
exactly.
that's even tougher, Well, I know that there are all kinds of ways that people can support the House of Ruth. Obviously, I'm guessing that volunteer things are a little tricky right now in terms of COVID, but I actually brought something very funny just to entertain you. This is my box here, right? And many years ago, I learned that in addition to financial donations, et cetera, that you guys have a really cool program for this. This is like an old iPhone, whatever, 4 or something, but you actually will take old phones and people can donate their old phones. And I know there are other things too, but I just know right now that a lot of people have, either they're an old 3G phone, everyone's 4G or maybe even 5G right now. And of course, those of us who have kids have that phone that we gave our kid that then they wouldn't be caught dead with as they got older. We've all got this stuff. So I throw them in a box and send them to you. Can you share with people, you'll take phones anyway, so that maybe, look, it's difficult times financially. Not everybody can donate. If people can, that's awesome. But if not, what's something that someone could do small that would make a difference for your organization?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, the cell phones, tablets, those things we actually recycle. And as I was explaining, it's kind of like airline miles. We recycle those and we get points for technology purchases, which is really important for us because it helps us, not spend dollars on that. And we still have the resources that we need. One great way that you can help us that doesn't cost anything is to share our content. Become familiar with our social media platforms, share the content, because that does two things. One, that shares our message with somebody else. And two, it lets your community know where you stand on this issue. It lets them know that you are a safe place to go to. You could have a friend that you have no idea is dealing with this. And then when you share that post or share that comment or, get involved in that conversation, they now know that they have a safe place to go. So that's a really easy way. For folks that are local, we have a retail store in Owings Mills called Ruth's Closet. We're working on getting our online component moving with that, so that for those of you who are not in the Baltimore area could get involved in the fun. But it's an upscale resale boutique. So we have, it is higher end for those of us who are just getting started, or those that really love a bargain. That we've had Versace and Gucci and those sorts of things at amazing prices. So check that store out. We're at 75% off our winter clearance right now. Get ready for spring. So that's a great way to help out. Always financial donations are super helpful, because we can use that money, to keep the lights on, because grants don't really like to cover things like that. So it's that general operating money that helps keep the lights on. And then we'll be sharing a website that has ways to give. It has lots of different ways for you to get involved. Workplace giving, if your company does a match, you make a donation and they make a match. That's a fabulous way to double your donation. We have lots of folks that do that, and that's super helpful. And, just get involved. Just get involved in the conversation, sponsor an event. We have some great, really fun trivia nights coming up. So that's a lot of fun. We have a local Charm City Trivia is doing a Sex and the City night for us, and it's going to be a trivia night. So if that's a show real well, get your team together. It's all online, so anybody can participate. So that's lots of fun. We have our big spring luncheon coming up, which is all online this year, thanks to COVID. So that'll be entertaining. Robin Givens is our keynote speaker for that. So that's a great opportunity to get involved as well. So there's lots of ways to get involved or to volunteer. We talked a little bit about volunteering, COVID volunteering.
Volunteer during COVID, what's possible?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that are possible in this COVID world. One of the things that we have volunteers doing for us is helping us with thank you calls. We have a small staff, and so having a volunteer who can reach out to a donor and give them a call and say thank you for your donation is super helpful. We give you a script, frequently asked questions, so you can feel prepared. Most people don't ask questions. They say, oh, you're calling, thank you. And because you're calling to thank them and not ask them for more, they really like that. And then they don't know what to say.
1 second, Cheri, because that's really amazing, because most of the time you would think that you would need volunteers to solicit, but you're saying that they can actually help just by thanking people. Yep. That's something everybody could be really comfortable doing.
Right. And
I'll
that's,
volunteer for that. You can say, I'll
we'll
totally
send you a
volunteer.
list.
Count me
Yeah.
in,
Well,
volunteer number one. Okay. Yeah,
and the donors appreciate it.
but that's a really important distinction because for many people, asking for something is
Right.
uncomfortable, but sharing love is like, that's super
Right.
comfortable.
Yep. Super comfortable. And like I said, most people are so surprised that you're calling to say thank you instead of ask them, that they're kind of stunned and they say thank you and then they basically hang up. So they're usually really easy calls, but it's a great touch point with a donor. Just like a business, if you're talking to your customers, to say, I know that you bought this, or I know that let them know that know that they're there is huge. It's no different than a customer, good customer service, quite frankly. The other thing is that for folks who have translation skills, we're working on translating some of our products, particularly into Spanish. Anybody that has website development experience and wants to help out with that, I am our website manager, or whatever I'm called, and I am self-taught, which is a little scary. And so anybody that wants to sit down with me for an hour every 2 weeks and say, here's how you do this, that would be awesome. So you were really trying to be creative in what those opportunities look like, particularly as this, this is not going to be a 2-week experience. And, we've still probably got a couple more months before we're feeling like we're a little bit back to normal. But those are some of the easy ways to get involved.
There's somebody techie in here. God knows it's not me, but there's like 100 people in here. I bet you, and you take male support too. You don't need to be a woman, right? Because
I'll take it.
And so I'm sure we have some techie females, techie men. That would be awesome. And that's not a big commitment for some people. That's so second nature. For me, I'm just happy if I'm able to get us on here live.
Right. It's, it is, I have learned quite a bit about it, but I have learned that the more I learn, the less I know. So that's definitely a challenge.
So I guess a couple things. So number one, if they want to support, obviously they can, clean out their old phones. I didn't know you took iPads and tablets and stuff. Do you also take laptops, or what is your ruling on all that?
Generally, the laptops, what we find is that they're a little too old for us to work with. And so we do that on a case-by-case basis. We'll work with our IT department to make sure it's something we can actually use. And then we'll decide if we can take that or not. But unfortunately, they're not as recyclable as some of the other things.
And the phones, grandma's flip phone, is there a cutoff, like a certain level, or anything at all?
Anything right now, the large part is, it's kind of an environmental conservation issue as well. These things don't deteriorate. And so if we can correctly recycle them, it's better for the environment. We obviously get much less for the flip phones, than we do the higher end iPhones and sort of thing, but we still get something for them. So please feel free to send those in. And we do not need the chargers, no cases.
I was going to say that. And does it need to power on, or like
Nope.
it can be, hey, I dropped it in the, sink and I can't turn the thing on, or the screen's cracked. It's all
Send
good.
It on. Yep, it's all good.
I don't know anybody. I bet you every single person who's watching this has at least one of them. And if you've got kids, I know you got some loot. So they can do that now. We'll put in the website. We'll put in the 800 number. In terms of donating the phones, would that go to the House of Ruth, like the regular location, or is there a separate address for that?
Yeah, I gave you the administrative address for that. So they just send they go to the attention of the development department, and then we'll take care of them.
Okay, and then two last things, just because if we can drum up some support for you, that's why we have you on here, to educate people, to empower people, to stand up, and also to see if we can help. So in terms of the other pieces, you mentioned that there's a store. Is that for shopping support or donating and shopping support? Does it go both ways?
Both. So all of the proceeds from the store go back to support the programs and services of House of Ruth Maryland. But we're also soliciting donations from the community. What we do is when donations come in, we make an assessment. We have that retail outlet. We have a second retail outlet that's a lower end thrift. And then we also, kind of skim off the top for our clients. We do have a clothes closet in the shelter where it's set up like a boutique. So our clients can come in and actually shop versus kind of having things in piles. They can shop there. So that's the first place donation goes, and then to either of the stores based on the quality of the item. Our other store right now is closed due to COVID, but we'll be reopening that hopefully this summer.
So also if somebody wants to, if they live locally and they want to, score themselves some kind of little discount thing, they can go buy it and that'll support it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And then last but not least, I'm hoping that there is somebody, I will definitely volunteer to make calls. There's no doubt I can talk. That's about all I got for skill set. If we have people who want to make calls, or what I'm praying is that there's somebody watching this that has technical skills. Should they reach you through the group? Because I know that you are now.
I'm in the group.
Is that the best way, or is there another way you'd prefer people to reach out to you?
They can reach me through the group, or I'll give you my email address and you can share that and they can reach me through that as well.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you. I really cannot tell you how much I respect the work you're doing and the difference you're making, because, you know, this is, like I said, we do have men in here. I never want to cut my men out, but this is really a place where we're trying to empower, inspire, and, you know, help women live a better life. And, you know, for the statistics you gave, that's a lot of people that, when you look at the numbers of this group already, there are so many people who either are in it, have been in it, or know somebody who's in it. So, you know, the more I feel that we come together, the better. But it's leadership like yours, Cheri, like that's what makes it possible. So, you know, thank you for being part of such an incredibly powerful organization. How long has House of Ruth been around now?
We are coming up on our 45th year.
It's incredible. Yeah. So if you're not from Maryland, House of Ruth is very famous around here. It is.
We're working on that national famous. So get ready, those of you in the group. We'll share some information about the national corporate trainings coming up.
Yeah, that would be great. And if any of you are watching this also, then you can invite other women into this group that may really benefit from this interview. That's a really nice, subtle way of getting them in here and go, hey, there's this awesome thing. They have speakers every week. And, you know, they'll just happen to see that Cheri's been our speaker.
There you go.
A little subtle way to get in. Well, thank you again. I appreciate your time. And for all of you who joined us today, thank you so much. We're going to post all of this right below the interview, so you have all the information. And as you can see, her name is on the screen. It's Cheri Parlaman. And you can also, if you need something, reach out to her and contact. But let's all do it. I'm going to put myself out there. I'll be volunteering right away. I can't do the tech thing, but I can definitely do some of the other things, and I'll make a donation, and I will also make some phone calls. So thank you again. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Hope you have a fantastic week. Take care.